Welcome to Impact. We have another exciting week ahead of us. I'm Nick Barber.
And I'm Richa Khandelwal Bhatt.
How are you, Richa?
I'm very, very well. How are you, Nick?
Great, great. What's in store this week?
A lot of good stuff is in store this week. And before I proceed, I want to welcome our new producer for Impact, Miss Huldah Thompson.
Yay,
Huldah, say
Huldah.
hi.
Hi.
Well,
welcome.
She's a lovely lady, and I'm sure she's going to steal your heart away with her woman on the street segment, and also with a lot of passion that she brings on board Impact. So, well, Nick, what do we have in the first segment here?
The first segment, Richa, is Philip Morris, our own Philip Morris, and he'll be interviewing Maggie Mancinelli Cahill. And Maggie is the producing artistic director at the Capitol Rep in Albany. So this should be exciting. It's a great place, the Capitol Rep, as we all know, well known in the Capital District. So I'll particularly be interested in hearing this interview.
That's great. So let's watch out for this.
Maggie and Philip.
Welcome to Impact. I'm Philip Morris, CEO of Proctors, and our interviewer for today's art segment. Our guest today, my guest today, is Maggie Mancinelli Cahill, the artistic director of Capitol Rep, the professional theater of the Capital Region based in Albany. Maggie, welcome. What makes you special? What makes Cap Rep special?
What makes Capitol Rep special? Well, I think one of the things that makes us special is that you can see really fabulous actors really up close. Because Capitol Rep, the farthest seat in Capitol Rep is 30 feet away from the stage. And we're a thrust theater, so that means that you see actors on three sides of a theater. And so just the environment itself makes it a special experience, oftentimes for people to see plays that they've seen in a bigger place, like Proctors, for example. And when they come to us, it's an intimate experience, very up close and personal, sort of right there in your face.
What does it mean to be a professional theater? What's the distinction here that
Capitol Rep works with three different unions. We work with the Actors Union from, the Actors Equity Association. We work with USA, United Scenic Artists, and we work with SDC, which is the Directors Union. So all of our people belong to artistic unions. And occasionally, when we hire enough union people, because we're bound by rules and regulations, we can then hire people from our community to come in and be with our professionals. And I consider that kind of a wonderful learning experience and a way to get very talented people from every walk of life onto our stage. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can once our union requirements are filled.
But it does mean that what you're producing, no one else does. You're building, creating shows with people that no one else
We
does.
have a full-time staff. A lot of people don't realize it, that we have a full-time staff of artisans that build everything from the ground up. We have a scene shop, we have a costume shop. Our properties are built right in the Capital Region. We have very significant cast people who have to be especially trained in the theater to be able to do what they do, and they work year-round doing all of our shows because we're year-round theater, as you know. So, that is something that I take very seriously because the people live here, the money stays here, and the creativity is a source of I think an important part of what we do. Because creativity, is really going to be important in the next decade.
Would there be professional actors walking the streets without Cap Rep?
No.
Probably not.
No, because and they live in downtown Albany.
Yeah, right.
Because they have to live in proximity to the theater. So our actors, you'll find them in the coffee shops and restaurants all around the theater when they're here, and they're here for anywhere between 9 and 12 weeks. Depending on what we're doing.
Now, our viewers may not know that Cap Rep and Proctors work together. We're doing administration. You're doing the art. So far, so good. We still like each other. This is going okay. But instead of talking about that, that's kind of dry.
All right.
Why are you doing this? What brought you to this?
To theater?
Yeah.
Well, I was really a literature major. I love great literature. I love great books. And I couldn't get a scholarship. But I got a scholarship in theater, so I said, okay. The guy in the theater program said, look, if you come here, you can minor in literature. And like in anything, I did not realize really in my life how much I really loved theater because I hadn't done it. And the minute that I did it, I thought, oh my gosh, these are the crazy people I've been looking for my whole life. They're really committed. They love to tell stories. And for me, it was like books coming alive on stage. So I did minor in literature, but I just, from then on, it was full steam ahead. I
you act?
love telling stories. Yes, but I was a terrible actress. I have no idea why they gave me a scholarship.
But it was for acting.
It was for acting, yeah. I did very little when I was in high school. I wasn't a tap dancing kid or anything like that, you know. But I had been in a couple of plays, and I had a student teacher who took a liking to me. And I realize now, you know how you look back in your life and there's people who have made a significant difference? She was my angel.
High school or middle
high
school?
school. She came into my life when I was a senior in high school, when I was rejected from my literature scholarship at the State University, and said, I got a deal for you, kid. And she sent me to Colorado Women's College, to the head of the theater program, and he gave me a scholarship. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without her, without him. And when I walked into that theater department, I really felt home, and I've never left. You know,
How'd you get to directing? Because you were a lousy actress?
I was a terrible actress. I kept wanting to tell people what to do. I know, I know you find that hard to believe.
I can't believe it, Maggie.
I haven't changed. So I went off to acting school in New York City, and I took acting classes, and they drove me crazy because I wanted to direct the scenes. You should go over there, you should go over here, you should talk faster, you should get out of the business. You know, I mean, I just wanted to make it better. I wanted to tell a story. I didn't want to be the story. I wanted to tell a story. I think that drive in me to do literature never really got out of my system, still to this day.
So do you use a pen? Do you tell stories by writing?
I used to write a lot of short stories. They were sort of, you know, I was kind of infamous in my family for doing that. And but I don't do that anymore. I don't have time. I need an assistant, by the way.
Oh, really? But we're talking about doing a project that might have you involved in story creation as well as
you know,
show building.
you're right about that. I have written for our young people's program. I've been involved, and I have co-written, and I have written several of the shows. I wrote An Alien's Guide to Planet Earth. You know, I was a co-writer with Jill Rafferty over at the Art Center in Troy on a play called Friend of a Friend, Tales of the Underground Railroad, and that was a research thing that we did. And I just did pure Poe. I adapted 3 stories of Poe's, and we went on the road. So, and I really liked it. But do you see the pattern here? Those are about all of them had either a fairy tale base or a document base or a literature base, because that's really where I live. I love great stories. I love myth. I love, you know, I'm looking forward to, I hope we're going to be telling more stories about the great waterways, you know, throughout New York. And I love the idea that we'll be able to find the myth and what made those waterways great, as well as the historic value of them, and, you know, and the Trail to Freedom and all of those kind of things. So for me, that collision between myth, story, and history, that's like the bingo for me. I mean, that just floats my boat. I love it.
So where do you want to be in the next 5 years in terms of you, Maggie? I mean, what would float your boat for the next 5 years?
What would float my boat is to be around more writers, is to be in a really creative setting where I was around a lot of writers, where I could be a part of that process of developing more new work. And I think actually the Proctors partnership, I know that it might be a little dry, but the truth is that without our shared resources, I don't know if I'd see that in the future for Capital Rep. And because of our shared resources, I'm beginning to think that we might be able to manage that. You have to have time to do that. You know, writing takes time. You have to percolate. You have to really foster that creativity. You can't be run by your box office. You have to be driven by the creativity and all of this percolating up, and be able to have people around that can really guide that creative process. And that's time consuming and exciting, but it will not get you dollars at the ticket window. So
Right.
you have to be strong to do that. You know, and strength will drive all the time programming and excitement. It's really true in the
So
arts.
thinking about your career here, pick an example of somebody, something that you have had an impact on that really almost brings you to tears.
Well, there's been several kids that went through our STAR program that I have to say have been incredibly remarkable. The fact that they really came out of poverty and were given up. They were just dumped at Harriet Gibbons School, and there's one boy in particular who was a big troublemaker in his class, terrible. And our teaching artist walked in, and he spoke out of turn, of course, and he had a voice like James Earl Jones.
Oh, really?
So we went, he's a troublemaker, but he's got a great voice. And so we tapped him in that program. And this breaks my heart in a good way. We just got a note from him that he has been cast in To Kill a Mockingbird at his college. And he's a theater major, and he wants to go into teaching. And this is one of those great stories where everything about Capitol Rep, and he saw To Kill a Mockingbird when he was a kid before we revived it a couple years ago, and he always wanted to be in it. And he couldn't at the time because of his family situation. And now here he is in college. He's in To Kill a Mockingbird. He writes us, and that's the kind of thing that kind of goes, that's where it's at.
Oh, very interesting. His voice will be well appreciated.
Oh, yes, it will be. Yeah, he's playing the Reverend.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if
He's
he was.
playing the Reverend. It's perfect.
No, that's
Yeah,
terrific.
perfect.
What are you looking forward to this year?
This year, I'm looking forward to having. I'm very excited by our current season, and I'm really looking forward to directing God of Carnage, which is because suburban people being really horrible and worse than their children. And I think that'll be very fun to direct.
Very physical.
It's very physical. People, getting mad and taking it out on each other.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that 8 times in a week.
I know, it's going to be. But, there's a scene in that where one of the women dunks one of the obnoxious cell phones that's been going off in the social conversation, dunks it in a glass of water. I want to cheer every time I read it, and I think the audience will too. So I'm excited about that, and I'm looking forward to creating a season. I don't want to announce it, but it's been really fun working with you and looking around and what's happening around the country and figuring out what stuff is that we want to bring here that people have never seen before, and also perhaps dipping our toe and doing some new play readings so that we can give people a peek into the development process.
Maggie, thank you for being with us.
Thank
This
you.
is Philip Morris with Maggie Mancinelli Cahill from Capitol Rep, the artistic director, and thank you for joining us at Impact.